Welcome to this afternoon's session, focused on FinTech. My name is Fumi, and I'm the General Counsel, Head of GRC at MFS Africa. Some of you may know MFS Africa already. We are one of Africa's largest digital payments networks. Later today, I'm going to have two of my colleagues on, so I'm sure they'll tell you a bit more about us. Like I said earlier, this afternoon is focused on FinTech, and the speakers will be talking about the input that FinTech has had in the development and the growth of the African continent. It's going to be a combination of solo presentations and panel discussions. Right now, I will move on to the first solo presentation by Ralph Pecker. Ralph is the co-founder and CEO of Paycode, a fintech company that provides biometric identity and low-cost financial services in Africa's deep rural areas. He has worked in the IT sector for over 25 years, starting out as a programmer and system analyst, and working in a variety of roles, including consulting and directorships across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Ralph, you've got 20 minutes. Come and take it away.
I don't think I need all 20 minutes, but I'm happy to take questions and answers if I do cut it short. Good afternoon. As you heard, Ralph Pecker, co-founder and CEO of Paycode. Just to give you some background on myself to substantiate why I say under the mango tree, and I'm going to keep using that word under the mango tree, and everyone in the company and everyone around the world at the moment starts referring to me. There's that guy from under the mango tree. But it has quite a lot of history and it resonates to my background. I'm a Zambian, born, bred, grew up in the rural parts of Zambia. Anyone that's Zambian here today will know Sinazongwe. That's where my parents brought me up, and I understood the sort of last mile, deep rural world of the diversities and challenges that it had. So I would say those diversities and challenges haven't gone away. They're still there. And probably what I've also learned since it's been started up Paycode, that it doesn't only exist in Africa. I thought it only existed in Zambia, but it actually exists all over Africa. And also now that we're doing business in Philippines, I've now noticed that they've got the same challenges as we've got in Africa. So I'm happy to say that it's not just an African issue or a Zambian issue, if that may be it. Financial inclusion, which is what I see a lot of it around this show since yesterday and today. It seems to be the buzzword. I just hope it's not the .bomb word. But I do think that it is a useful sector, and it certainly is doing what is in my DNA, and that is to improve the lives of those that really need it, and not the ones that live in the urban areas of these rich centers and countries and so forth. So it is a market that needs to be cared for, and I'm glad to say that I've seen so many fintech companies around the world starting up and doing things like MFS and that, providing financial inclusion to the underserved, underbanked, or whatever. And I'm going to bring up that word underserved. So I believe that financial inclusion should not just only be giving somebody a bank account or financial services. So something like distribution of COVID vaccines is underserved. So it doesn't have to have a financial connotation. So we prefer to use the word underserved rather than underbanked. So when we did a research, and before starting up Paycode, we had the fortunate of accessing quite a lot of data and reports from the World Bank and central banks. We interviewed a number of central banks, and there was a common thread and a common problem that came from all this financial and fintech and financial services buzzword, underbanked, underserved, whichever terminology you prefer. And the three things that we picked up, in fact, we've added the fourth. Well, I personally believe the fourth is an important challenge. But the first three, which I'm sure you all will start nodding your heads. The first thing is you cannot bring somebody into the ecosystem if you can't identify them. And if you look at the World Bank reports around the world, if you believe in those reports, over 1 billion people are not digitally identified. And I can resonate that as well, because my mother, who lived in Sinazongwe, never had a zip code or a postal code. You couldn't say that Anne, that was her name, lives 2 mango trees to the right. She just didn't have a digital ID. So you cannot bring anybody into an ecosystem to serve them properly before you identify them. So that was the first tick that I realized before we started the business that you needed to address. The second most important thing, the demographic and the people we are dealing with are sort of the $2 to $3 or $5 a day type people, and they can't afford the traditional bank accounts that we see today, the cost of a normal and standard bank account. So affordability was another challenge. You needed to provide a solution that was affordable. And the third, and not least, or certainly not last, was connectivity. So if you take my mom's example, and I, as a young boy, knew where she stashed all her cash under the mattress. I used to go and take a kwacha or two. She didn't have a bank account. She never had a cell phone till the day she passed. Never had a cell phone. She's 91 years old, didn't need a cell phone because there was no connectivity where we lived. Zero connectivity. And so what was the need of having a cell phone or a mobile phone? So we used to use RF radio to communicate under emergencies. So connectivity is important. And I'll bring to the fourth point, which I think everybody should actually look at this in all countries, but certainly in my mother's example, is the trust. You've got to build trust with these people that are in the last mile or last yard, because they used to, 4 or 5 generations, having access to the cash and being able to spend the money whenever they want or count the money whenever they want. And suddenly now you're going to convince them to take this cash and digitize the cash, be it on a mobile phone, or be it on a smart card, or whatever technology you provide. You can't the next day say to that person, oh, by the way, you can't go and spend the money, or you can't go to the merchant, or you can't cash out because you're offline. They're just going to come back to you with the trust issue and say, well, I've had this money for 4 generations. You've now just convinced me to go and put it into some sort of digital wallet, and now you're telling me offline. I don't understand. So you've got to build trust at that last mile. So with those 4 things, we took a very strong view that we would build the experience, buy some of the tech, and build the tech to provide and address those 3 areas. Those 3 areas, firstly, affordability, and I'm going to go in any order. We had to own the IP ourselves. We could not run on another person's rail. So you've heard of many fintech companies will run on a MasterCard rail and a Visa card rail. We needed to own our own rail purely because we needed to charge any price. So for argument's sake, we did the students' grants for the World Bank in Guinea-Conakry before the coup, unfortunately, where they asked us when we loaded the value for the students' grant that it had to be for free, but only when they spent on non-educational purchases we could charge. Now, you couldn't do that if you used other people's rails. Because it was our own rail or our own IP, of course we did it. And we registered over 108,000 students, and we certainly caught 40% of those students were ghost students, and I'm going to come to that point just now. ID. Most important thing on the ID side is that you needed to go to basic, affordable, easy type of identification. So we have talked about, and I think the technology will advance in the future, but today I do not think it is mature enough for the market that we're at, and that's that last mile, last yard. The last yard is actually under that mango tree, is that people are talking about facial, voice, and all those type of technologies. And I just don't personally think that's going to work just yet. So we had to standardize on what we call as the lowest common denominator, and that's your biometric fingerprint. So we went for a technology that captured the fingerprints, but more importantly, and then it'll come to the points where I'm going to show some references of customers we've distributed funds for, is proof of life, biometric, not a photographic image of a biometric. Because if I can take a photographic image, I can just copy that and put it onto another device. The devices are getting more and more sophisticated and intelligent. Proof of life is the blood flow of your biometric, meaning that that person that's getting the pension is alive and hasn't been paid. I have a colleague that I know from Crown Agents Bank who says that they don't have no clue paying the British pensions to certain parts of the world if those people are still alive. Proof of life. So we invested in the proof of life development of our technology, and therefore our slogan is last mile proof of life financial inclusion to the underserved, underbanked. We can throw lots of jargons in that, but it really is reaching those people right at the mango tree and making sure it's a living person and the money is only going to that person. So I'm going to tell you about some references where we've used that kind of technology. So a lot of our customers are DFIs, IDOs, NGOs. So World Bank, we've got about 4 or 5 projects in different countries for the World Bank, United Nations. So we used a project with the World Bank in Mozambique, where we had to distribute social grants to, I think it was about 18,000 people in a distraught village or area. The database that they gave us was 46,000 people that they said they had to pay to. When we registered all those 46,000 people, we found 22,000 had been in the system for so many years, 3 or 4 times. So somebody was getting a social grant 3 or 4 times per month. Biometric takes away those things called ghost workers, duplications, and so forth, and gives the value back to the institutions, back to the people who are providing, to give the people more money. We did a project similar to that. We have a very strong presence in Ghana. We're the national alternative switch in Ghana. So if you're from Ghana and you know eSwitch, it is pay code, just white labeled. And so when we entered into Ghana 14 years ago, the technology went into 14 years ago. 3-4 years ago, the government asked us to put on the civil servants and government wages. When we loaded that 4 years ago, we captured 47% of the database being non-existent or duplication or ghost. In fact, we even found one person who they were paying a salary to had died 10 years ago. We saved the government $35 million a year on their payroll. So that's what I'm talking about, proof of life. And I'm very passionate about that because I believe that people that have that fingerprint should be getting the benefit of the value, not the people who are trying to cheat the system. Getting to the last mile is probably what I was asked to come and talk about. Yes, it's the technology. It is the ID challenge. Everybody's got the same problem. You cannot bring the person in if it's not ID. Yes, the affordability. Yes, the connectivity. And that's the last bit, the best, I would say, is connectivity is, how do we do it? We're a full offline real-time technology provider. We do not have to be connected to any back end to load value, spend value, and therefore I can give those people in the last mile or last yard guaranteed 24/7 access to their funds, meaning I can build the trust. We can build the trust with the people because we never have to say offline, you can't spend today. We have a global patent that is an offline, real-time piece of technology that allows us to continue. Yes, the question you people will ask is when does it settle? It settles when you want to settle, or settles when the government wants to settle, or the institution. Anyway, I'm going to rush quickly and to show you how we onboard people in the most diverse, challenge areas in Africa. And this quick roadshow is 2 minutes. Is a live situation where we've done the social grant for the World Bank in Mozambique, and we went live last year. So as you can see, this is our team going into deep rural Mozambique. It's an area, if you're familiar with Mozambique, called Chokwe. It's about, from Maputo, it's about 250 kilometers. And you see those vehicles there, that is thanks to the FSD, they helped us onboard these 18,000 people, or the 40,000 people that they thought they had. We then arrive into the mango tree area. We normally choose a school, if there is a school, or we'll find a building, and if we can't find the building, we'll go under the mango tree. We go and start talking to the villagers around, and you've heard of social media. There's a thing called bush telegraph. You just tell the chief that everyone in the village is going to get a social grant. Next day, you'll have hundreds and hundreds of people pitch. We educate the people. This is all in Portuguese. So we actually educate. And one of the things I must say, in my experience in 40 years in the rural area, the literacy in their own language is fairly high. So they get it very quickly. So after we taught them, there's it under the mango tree. We explained to them that they're going to get their social grant, they're going to be registered, they're going to be onboarded, they're going to take their fingerprints. And then this is an interesting, this lady in the front, I actually went to speak to her. She'd been waiting for 4 years for her social grant, never ever got it. And we were the first people that actually delivered her social grant. She was happy as ever. There's a good example of us registering a person, taking all the fingerprints. Those people in the grey shirts are FSD people that we trained them, so they're normally students. And then you're doing an offline, online transaction. So here is an actual transaction, and I'm going to prove it to you in a video that's to follow. This, and this is my last slide, this is a lady, and you watch her doing a withdrawal. This entire transaction, cash out, is an offline transaction. She was waiting 9 years for her social grant. I spoke to her. I had a translator because she couldn't speak English. She spoke Portuguese. She withdraws her cash after just being registered 5 minutes ago and given a bank account and a card. She draws the cash and watch what she does. She cannot believe it. She cannot believe it's the right amount. And she doesn't leave that queue or line before she gets her money. And that, to me, is doing business and doing business for good. This lady, and we've been now paying these people for every month for the last year or so. But it's not just in Mozambique. We're in 8 countries. We have 5.5 million people on our platform. We've got a pipeline of another 20 million in 8 to 9 countries. Nigeria, name them all, we're there. And our mission is to bank 50 million people like her by the end of 2026. Thank you very much.